Okay, so deep bow to everyone here, to our community of practice. Uh, I want to welcome everyone to this gathering as a kind of introduction to our community and a little bit of an introduction to me. And then we'll move into some very deep and profound teachings from Thich Nhat Hanh of the Plum Village Tradition, which is one of the kind of greatest and most established Buddhist traditions in the West. And we'll go through a reading together on the 5 mindfulness trainings on that topic. So, for myself, I am Bhante Warapanyo. I am a 30-year-old American, and in 2018, I left America and moved to Thailand to become a Buddhist monk. So, for the past 5 years, I've been living at Buddhist monasteries around the world. I've been studying with my teacher in Myanmar. I originally ordained in Thailand, but I've had the good opportunity and the good chance to meet many meditation masters and also be kind of fully immersed in the communities of practice all around the world. About 2 or 3 years ago, during COVID, there came up kind of an opportunity for me to support an already established community online for leading meditation, for giving kind of guidance about um, how to practice and just bringing people into that space. And what stemmed from that, or what kind of naturally evolved from that, was our own community space. That's how this Discord developed, kind of during the COVID period, for people who were more interested to continue our group of practice. So we've become really the preeminent online meditation community on Discord, in terms of like having live community events, group meditations, like an active user base where there's a lot of people who are ready to meditate and show up for these practices together. And the monk life community is very much made up of those sincere practitioners. You know, the space wouldn't be how it is right now if we didn't have that energy or that vitality of people, sometimes with only a few hours notice, just ready to get together and practice meditation, to look at Buddhist teachings and have kind of a communal experience. So I am the main facilitator, um, but I'm not the main teacher really of the community. I'm just more the facilitator and the monk and the person that um, practically is managing and supporting the community. But we've had guest monks, we've had some of our community members facilitate teachings or meditation events. And the real aspiration or intention of this community is to be a home for a community of practice, fellow practitioners coming together to meditate, to study teachings, but also to be kind of a hub for resources, getting into Buddhism, getting into meditation practice, approaching Zen Buddhism in particular, which is very meaningful to me. And also this community as being a access point or an extension of my life as a monk, so that I'm affiliated and connected with many meditation centers around the world, and that means that members of our community are also connected with those. This is a unique space online. It's experimental, but the core of it is that we are people who are really interested to meditate, to practice, and to have a lived experience of the spiritual path. It's kind of what, for me, the vision of the monk life community is. And to bring as many people as we can into that, from all different walks of life, younger people, older people, men, women, trans, non binary, all inclusive, just to come together and practice, not really in a sectarian way, but more a Buddhist influenced community meditation path way. And we're finding out what that looks like. And so far, we've been very successful. Our community is thriving. And right now, I am staying with the Plum Village community of Thich Nhat, and there are many monastics here that are also Western. So I'm getting the rich experience to be with my siblings or my monastic brothers, and to live together and practice together. And it's a very nourishing time for me, and I feel the power and the inspiration to offer that and to share that with this community here. Yeah, it's not necessarily so fleshed out or systematic. We do have the website and we do have the resources available in the Discord, but the real core of it is just being ready to show up and practice. And here we are. So, before we move into the 5 mindfulness trainings and get into more of our study and practice portion of our gathering, which is going to be really, really nourishing and nice, I'd like to invite and really request, if anyone here does have any questions about me, about this community, about stepping into spiritual practice and what that looks like. Um, and then we'll move into this study practice portion of our gathering. And please don't feel shy or put on the spot, but if you do have a curiosity or a question or something that you'd like to understand more clearly, I'm here to answer. And
This is Gloria. I'm considering becoming a member. Um, what is it they expect from me, or what I should actually be aware of if I want to become a member of a center, a Zen center teaching? Because here in New York, especially where I live, I wasn't aware that um, there was so many, and the headquarter is here on Telegraph, I think, the Teleport on in Staten Island. So I have not spoken to them, so I don't know for sure. Will they ask me to detach from everything I have?
okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
a big part of the practice that we're stepping into here, Gloria, and this is difficulty is nourishing. The heat, the cold, it inspires us, it drives us, it moves us to get involved with our life, right? And so spiritual practice, Buddhism, meditation, enlightenment, chakra, whatever labels or ideas you have about it, it's not just another thing to consume. It's not just another thing to, feed to our eyes or our ears or our mouth, right? Our taste. It's really an invitation to practice. So when we start to seriously consider like having a spiritual life or focusing on meditation, we now have the encouragement to go on pilgrimage, right? Google Maps, Buddhist temple near me or meditation center near me. And the basic practice is that you find that there's this hub, maybe it's a Buddhist temple, maybe it's a meditation center, maybe it's a kind of gathering or a group that isn't necessarily you don't know what it is, and you give them a call or you check out their website, you see what is available and kind of what's on the table, but then you step forward, right? You go and visit, you go and for a day of meditation or for a dharma talk or for a gathering that they have, and that means you put yourself in this place of vulnerability. We're not used to being, a lot of us are not used to being in community. We're certainly not used to being in spiritual community. So that means that just going to a meditation center or going to a Buddhist temple near you that you hear about or find out about, it's a pilgrimage, and then you learn through your experience what that place is and maybe what you can offer, what they can offer, and you have to be ready to try, right? To put forth the effort to put yourself in that place, practice, and listen and have an experience. As an American, it's like there's so much of life that's about consumption, but the ability to meet that drive for consuming, right? And the best, whatever you want the best of, order it on Amazon. It's there next day. Walmart, the fast food places, the Uber, and it's not just American, but we're kind of like the tippy top of consumerism and advertising. And so it gets us into this mindset where we set up everything to be something else to consume, right? Or something else that's kind of there to please us or meet our expectations. And that's not what the spiritual path is about. It's not about meeting our expectations. It's about showing up to life in a way that is vulnerable and exploratory and has bravery. Doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, but that's how you develop an understanding. Oh, this place is somewhere I can rely on. This is a place I feel comfortable. But you're not going to know that it's a place you can rely on or it's a place you can use or not use until you show up there and have an experience and listen and stop. Right? We're beginners. I've been a monk for 5 years and I've kind of been on a meditation path or a spiritual path for 10 years. And that beginner's mind is still there. It's like I'm beginning. And if we have that humbleness to say, yeah, I'm kind of a beginner, that means that the growth is just more. If you say, oh, I already know what that place is like, or I already know what meditation's like, I already know what spirituality is like, you've set this hard limit for yourself of growth. Whereas if you say, look, I'm a beginner and I'm exploring and I'm going to try this, the further you go, the more you can keep that beginner's mind, the further you can go. But to be a beginner means you're willing to show up and practice and listen. And if you don't understand or if you don't know what to practice, you show up, listen for a bit, and then you ask a question. You raise your hand, you share, you say, "Hey, I don't understand what's going on here." That's the vulnerability, right? That's the generosity. I don't understand what's going on here. And then you can be met there. So finding places near us that may be a meditation center or some kind of spiritual center, practice center near us, find out about it, and then you bring to that bravery, exploration, and generosity. And with that mindset, you go and have an experience and you learn from it, you grow from it, you develop. But be ready to check out different places. Be ready to, have a bad experience. It's okay to have a difficult experience. It's okay that this place isn't ideal for me or for you. But you go there and you learn and then you continue. Okay? Welcome. It's kind of a fundamental part of the spiritual path is this bravery and then generosity. First, you have to be brave to show up, and then when you do show up, you have to have some ability to give up your selfishness, your self-fixatedness, your self-grasping, right? It's like um, trying to receive more coffee or more tea in a cup that's already full. So you have to find a way to empty that cup, and it has to be an active process. So going to these meditation centers or these communities or just your spiritual life and exercising that generosity, exercising that giving up, that letting go is a little bit too passive sounding for me. Of course, letting go is a big part of the path, but it has to be this active expression of giving away, of offering out, of detachment, right? Of exposing yourself. And then you can have a little bit more in your cup as you pour that out. And then you can find out, is this a workable situation for me? Is this a place where I can practice? Is this something that I have an ability to understand? But it's too many people have a cup that's completely full, and then they go into a space or they want to check something out, and then they're like, "Oh no, I can't get anything from this." It's because your cup is completely full. It's just overflowing. Anything else that's put in there just flows out. So we've got to empty our cup, be willing to put down the baggage.
in my life.
Okay, anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask about Bante or about our community or just kind of the practice, the approach to the practice? Okay, someone um, actually on Facebook asked a question. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I didn't have the best experience growing up. I didn't have the best experience going from really in childhood, in the middle or developing and going into adulthood. It was difficult with parents divorcing and a lot of instability and moving around and being in different spaces. That was in my mind, right? That separation, that lack of healthy attachment. And after I graduated high school, I was really not in a good place. It was kind of like I had a trajectory and it was going downhill. Somehow I was fortunate enough to kind of travel outside of my comfort zone and meet different people and have different experiences. And so I found out about quote unquote spirituality when I was 19 or 20 years old and had some interesting, strong spiritual experiences with like Hinduism, with Native American kind of religions and communities. But I wasn't grounded. I didn't have my roots were very shallow in terms of like spiritual practice. And when I say spiritual, it means like a skillful way of living to reduce suffering and to bring about freedom and well being. So I started like going downhill again after I had contacted the spiritual life and these different traditions, and I was fortunate enough to learn about this residential meditation center called Upaya Zen Center in New Mexico. And I went and lived there for 1 year, and it was probably one of the most intense periods of my life, going from this place of really serious mental health suffering, mental health issues, and social issues, emotional issues. I mean, it was just a mess, to being in spiritual community with well-minded practitioners and some, like experienced practitioners, having a really deep regular meditation schedule and even doing intensive meditation retreats, and then having access to Buddhist teachings or Zen perspective, Zen approach, Buddhist approach. And somehow I was able to stay there and grit my teeth, even though I was having these just gnarly suffering experiences mentally and emotionally that were coming up. I was able to stay in that. And after a year, it it just wasn't working out there anymore, and I went back to living a normal life, and I was much more free and successful and light. And a couple years went by until I was 25, and I had reached this like material success point with a job and relationship and all these things. And I just realized that that wasn't for me, that I did feel this drive for the spiritual life. And that led me to taking these steps of giving up everything. That's the monk life. That's the power of the monastic tradition, is this dare or this step off the boat of the normal life or the comfortable life or the material life, stepping off into, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not going to keep all these things. I'm not going to grasp on all these um, material development directions, right? And that eventually led me to moving to Thailand when I was 25 and ordaining and becoming a monk. And I've been immersed in that culture and that community for the past 5 years. I'm 30 now. So myself is really about Buddhism, community, helping others, of course, dealing with my struggles and my sufferings and certain things I enjoy, certain things that I don't enjoy. But it's very much for me, um, like this is the path that I believe in: community, virtuous living, generosity, meditation. For me, there's a revolution in that, internally and socially, externally, that's possible. And so I have a lot of faith in the Buddhist path, and I experience a lot of support from this community and from the Buddhist community as a whole. And that's why I'm able to show up in this way, where I'm not working a job, I'm not having kind of like private relationships, but it's it's just always on the edge of practice and on the edge of kind of coming back to the robes that I wear and the community that I find myself in, and coming back to my practice, which is very much meditation, study, and doing good deeds, and kind of bringing people into my practice and my life to help them as much as I can. And by helping others, I have the opportunity to help myself, right? Be in a wholesome space, be inspired. I'm inspired by this community. It's funny because I've set up the Discord, and I'm the main facilitator, and we've got a group of caretakers and people that help out, but usually there's not too much back and forth. There's not too much discussion or organizing that's going on behind the scenes, and yet the presence of people here is their minds are here. And somehow I feel that and I know that. Even sometimes it's just seeing pictures, but there's a lot of inspiration that comes from that. And I guess I believe in this community, and I feel inspired to continue on this path and continue support in this community. I know that this practice works because of where I came from, where my mental health was, where my virtue was, where my mindfulness was. And I know where I'm at now. And I see the direction that it's possible to go in because I've contacted enlightened teachers, wisdom teachers, just people who are on a totally different stratosphere of wisdom and compassion and mindfulness and freedom. And I know that that's possible, to heal the mind, to change the mind. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. And Javier Fernandez says, Upaya website says it's $100 per day to stay there. So you paid so much for the year, or is there a way to do it for free or less? Usually, with these kind of meditation centers, you can be kind of a resident, or you can get a scholarship. You can be a volunteer. There's different opportunities if you reach out and connect more directly with the center, right? I mean, there's this whole culture of being a commenter, leaving a comment, leaving a review, leaving a like and leaving a dislike, reading some commentary or reading what someone else has to say about something, kind of like a spectator mindset. And that's exhausting for communities. So it's almost like you have to charge a price. You have to say, if you want to stay here, you need to pay a price, because if you don't, you just get people who want to come and hang out, and use the resources. So but if you are a practitioner, if you can reach out, if you can say, hey, I'm really interested to stay here, but I don't have the finances or the resources, they can meet you there. But in general, we're not, in America, we're just not set up for spiritual community. And we're learning what it means to find our spiritual roots and come together in community in a sustainable way, right? And what that's going to look like long term is experimental, and of course it needs generosity to do it. Generosity is not just about money, but for most people, that's where like most of their value or attachment in life is, right? If you're a person where you don't have much of a community environment or community support, money is where all of your safety is, or your confidence is, right? Your independence is. So you've got to be ready to give up that independence to help, right? To serve, to participate. We've got to go from being independent to interdependent. And that takes a lot of generosity. It takes a lot of humbleness. Um, it takes a lot of willingness to reach out and share, not just leave a comment, not just fill out the application, but send an email and say, hey, I'm serious about this. Can you help me? And any worthwhile spiritual center, they should meet you at that place. They should meet you and say, hey, okay, let's try to figure this out. Let's see what's possible. Go ahead.
So I'm sure, like when you were younger, you had a lot of doubts about like whether you were going down the right path in life. How did you navigate that? Like, how do you? Because I always hear all the time, like, oh, you gotta like listen to your inner self to know if you're like, walking on the right path. But how? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I don't think it means very much. Um, we don't exist in a vacuum. And human beings, we rely on community, we rely on our elders, right? How do children grow and are raised and developed and become independent? By forming healthy attachment towards the people who know what to do, who have that lived experience. So you've got to follow and listen to people who have a lived experience. You need to have trust. You need to have faith to practice. You don't need to think about it, right? It's like if it was about being an engineer, being a carpenter, right? If it was about doing some kind of really essential, important thing for a community or for a home or what have you, and you were new to that, you don't come up and say, well, I wonder how I feel about joinery or, these measurements or the plumbing or, what you feel about it is, of course, it's something you need to process. It's something you need to work with, right? But more so, you need to find places, people, situations that can support you to practice and learn and listen and continue, right? And develop that faith and that trust so that you can just stop your ego's nonsense or stop that compulsive like grasping and activity and thinking to just listen and practice. And then you learn through your experience. You learn to listen to yourself in a deeper and deeper way. But if we can't stop, then it's very difficult to start. Right? It's like you go to your school classroom, but you can't stop having a discussion with the teacher, then how are you going to learn? It's a nice idea to be like American freedom and independence. And when I turn 18, I'm going to get the best job I can get and I'm going to move out on my own and I'm going to be alone. Well, I like this question. Who raised you? Who brought you to this point? What community brought you to this point? And if your answer to that is kind of like dark or vague, it's like it's not clear, it's kind of cloudy, like what, who did raise me? What community did raise me? Then that means you need community. You need to be raised, you need to be developed. You need to be heartened. You need to be deepened. You need to find the source material that you can connect with and align with so that you can practice seriously. And the golden rule, of course, is we need to be virtuous. We need to be generous. And we're going to go into that in a few moments, the 5 mindfulness trainings. You don't need to think about it. You need to stop yourself, recognize the suffering of your mind, recognize the unskillfulness of your mind, the difficulty. I don't know about y'all, but I've got a lot of difficulty, right? And you say, okay, stop and listen. And how do I develop and how do I grow? Of course, trust your gut, listen to your gut. If someone says, all right, you need to meditate for a while, and then for 99.99, you'll get the secret mantra. That doesn't sound quite right. Right? Or if some spiritual center, meditation center is charging all this money and you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm trying to figure out a way to practice. And they say, well, you pay or you can't join. Maybe that doesn't sound quite right to me, you know. So we have to know how to use our gut, but we also need to know how to trust our gut. And I think that's something we all need to develop more. That capacity to trust our gut and trust each other and go to refuge in each other as well-minded practitioners on the path. Right? And go to refuge to the Buddha, which is that enlightenment is, and maybe enlightenment's not the right term, but freedom, real compassion, real wisdom, real peace, real forgiveness, real patience. The emperor, right? The emperor's forgiveness, the emperor's wisdom, the emperor's power, the emperor's compassion, that this is real, not just in terms of Joe Biden and the American military, but it's true in terms of the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh and the community that he built, right? And there's many teachers like that, and there's people in different layers of the spectrum. And we look back to the Buddha and we say, yeah, that guy got it. And you don't need to think about it because the Buddha didn't create the world and the Buddha can't fix your problems. The Buddha is just that golden representation of compassion and wisdom and freedom, real liberation, real peace, real healing that doesn't depend on buying or selling, that doesn't depend on anyone or anything. It just depends on you. It just depends on your willingness to practice. Okay, is that all right, Brian?
Yeah, that's very helpful. So it's like, for one, you gotta learn through experience. You can't just think about how you're gonna feel. You gotta actually feel it, and then you also have to like learn from others on how to do that, more or less.
Well, we've got to keep showing up and we got to keep practicing, right? It's like if you're going to need to, for whatever reason, let's say you're going to join the military for whatever reason. Everybody who joins the military, you got to go through basic training, right? So if you're going to have to go through basic training or if you're going to have to go through life, there are certain practices that you can do to prepare yourself for that, for the difficulty, for the suffering, for the weight, the heaviness of reality. And you either do those practices and you prepare yourself or you don't. So it's just show up and practice and listen, and you don't need to think so much about it. We don't need to think so much about generosity. We don't need to think so much about precepts, following precepts. We don't need to think so much about the 5 mindfulness trainings. We need to practice them and incorporate them. We don't need to think so much about, do I want to be happy, or do I want to do good, or do I want to do bad? We need to do more good and do less bad. So find that way to show up, find that way to practice, find that way to attend to the heart. Don't be too mental about it, because that can have us in a place of a lot of blockages, a lot of barriers. If we're just trying to think our way through it, or if we're over identifying with our emotions, like, oh, I really feel depressed, I need to stay in bed, or I'm really depressed. Okay, there's a feeling of depression, so let's go for a walk, let's listen to a Dhamma talk, let's tune in, let's breathe, let's be mindful, let's do something good, let's act, let's practice, not just dwell or think.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so at this point, if everyone's ready, we'll go into the 5 mindfulness trainings, which will kind of be a very accessible and clear, direct teaching on how to practice the spiritual life or the meditator's life. Is that okay, or is there anyone who has a question that they feel fits in here before we continue? And try to keep in mind that this is an active community space. This is a continuous space. It's not like this is a random Zoom meeting that comes up and then who knows, where that came from or where it's going. This is a continuous community space, so there's no rush. There doesn't need to be any friction to figure something out or to understand. Just keep showing up and learn from your experience, and know that we're here and we're a sangha, we're a community of practitioners, and this is not a shallow space. This is not a normal Discord server. Okay, so let's go into the reading, or the listening for some of us. I put the link in the open discussion channel. So if you like to read along, and maybe later on you want to come back to this and keep this in your list, but it's in the open discussion channel on the Discord. And otherwise, you can just listen, and that'll also be completely fine. Before we get into this, we'll listen to 3 sounds of the bell. And as we invite the bell, just open your heart, open your lungs, open your stomach, open up this whole body to just the sound of reality, the sound of present moment experiencing, all the baggage, all the complicated ideas, past and future. The sound of the bell is enough. We don't need anything else to come home. Okay, let's try. The 5 mindfulness trainings. And please try to listen from the heart, listen from the breathing, listen from the body. The 5 mindfulness trainings have their root in the 5 precepts offered by the Buddha. Now, the 5 precepts are the 5 guidelines for skillful living for people who are Buddhist, but not necessarily monks. And those 5 precepts are usually written as don't kill, don't steal, don't lie or speak harshly, don't commit sexual misconduct, and don't take drugs or intoxicants. So the 5 mindfulness trainings have their root in the 5 precepts offered by the Buddha. They have been expanded and updated so that they represent a way to bring mindfulness into every area of life. Rather than hard and fast rules, they offer us a path to cultivate and develop actions of body, speech, and mind that can create a more healthy and compassionate world. An introduction to the 5 mindfulness trainings from Thich Nhat. And mindfulness is this capacity to be enlightened by a sunset, to be enlightened by the sound of the birds singing, to be freed, to be open, to be healed by the sound of the bell, right? To be invited into this heart moment. So these are the trainings to bring mindfulness into all aspects of our life so we can just be enlightened more and more and more, peacified more and more and more, healed more and more, coming home to the present. The 5 mindfulness trainings are one of the most concrete ways to practice mindfulness. They are non sectarian, and their nature is universal. They are true practices of compassion and understanding. All spiritual traditions have their equivalent to the 5 mindfulness trainings. The first training is to protect life, to decrease violence in oneself, in the family, and in society. The second training is to practice social justice, generosity, not stealing and not exploiting other living beings. The third practice is of responsible sexual behavior in order to protect individuals, couples, families, and children. The fourth is the practice of deep listening and loving speech to restore communication and reconcile. The fifth is about mindful consumption to help us not bring toxins and poisons into our body or mind. The 5 mindfulness trainings are based on the precepts developed during the time of the Buddha to be the foundation of practice for the entire lay practice community. I have translated these precepts for modern times because mindfulness is at the foundation of each one of them. With mindfulness, we are aware of what is going on in our bodies, our feelings, our minds, and the world, and we avoid doing harm to ourselves and others. Mindfulness protects us, our families, and our societies. When we are mindful, we can see that by refraining from doing one thing, we can prevent another thing from happening. We arrive at our own unique insight. It is not something imposed on us by an outside authority. Practicing the mindfulness trainings, therefore, help us be more calm and concentrated and brings more insight and enlightenment. We'll listen to one sound of the bell. The 5 mindfulness trainings represent the Buddhist vision for a global spirituality and ethic. Before we continue, I want to check in. Does anyone have any questions about just that general outline of the mindfulness trainings? Is it kind of clear what the approach is and the intention is in that? Basically, these are guiding principles for how to live our life in such a way where mindfulness is always on the cusp of our experience, where we're not just mindlessly doing anything, but everything that we do is an act of taking care. And this helps us to practice consistently. And with that consistency of practice, we can practice deeply. It's almost like the 5 mindfulness trainings are the temple for ourselves. We build a temple, or we build a community, we build a space for ourselves of protection and practice. And the more that you can incorporate those mindfulness trainings into your life, the more you have your own kind of spiritual center that's always there with you, that you can take refuge in.
I just wanted to come and show some support.
So
Tired.
take a seat, brother. The 5 mindfulness trainings represent the Buddhist vision for a global spirituality and ethic. They are a concrete expression, and this is really important to emphasize how this practice is concrete. It's not a matter of like chakra alignment or that the Buddha is going to purify you or something. These are concrete practices for how to live your spiritual life, really to incorporate and to live your spiritual life. You don't need to focus on the jhanas or this like spiritual development, all these other things. This is a way where you can bring that concreteness, that solidity of spiritual practice into the life that you're already living. And I want to welcome in my brother, Bante Nalaka, Brother Diamond, and he's going to help us with our 5 mindfulness trainings sharing. So these 5 mindfulness trainings are a concrete expression of the Buddha's teachings on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, the path of right understanding and true love, leading to healing, transformation, and happiness for ourselves and for the world. To practice the 5 mindfulness trainings is to cultivate the insight of interbeing or right view, which can remove all discrimination, intolerance, anger, fear, and despair. If we live according to the 5 mindfulness trainings, we are already on the path of a bodhisattva. So the bodhisattva is like the real Buddhist spiritual healer. They're devoting their lives not just for their own enlightenment, but also for the enlightenment of others, to help others become enlightened, to help others walk the path. So if we live according to the 5 mindfulness trainings, we are already on the path of a bodhisattva. Knowing we are on that path, we are not lost in confusion about our life, in the present, or in fears about the future. Right? And this is a really essential power of following precepts or staying with the 5 mindfulness trainings, right? Is that all that baggage, all those mistakes that we've made, all of that kind of confusion or fear we may have about the future or about, something happening in the present, we can have a refuge, or we can come back to our practice of goodness, of wholesomeness, of our dedication to helping others. We're not a bad person. We're not confused in the direction of our life, right? And we can have faith in that. We can be protected by that when those confusions or fears come up.
So it looks
Okay.
like we just started then. I didn't miss much.
Well, we've been going for a little bit, but yeah, maybe we can go one by one, take turns going through these 5 mindfulness trainings. You read one, then I'll read one. But first, brother, would you like to say a little bit about your experience with the 5 mindfulness trainings, or what they are, what they're meaning for you?
Sure.
What your understanding is about them?
I guess we'll have to share that mic, right? So
Yeah, let me just put it
centrally. Yeah. I'll just put it over here. Okay, mic check.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
You all can hear me clearly.
Hold on.
Inverted. Yeah, there we go. Wow, perfect. Right at the mouthpiece. So I am Bhikkhu Nalaka, and also I'm known as Brother Diamond, and that is a long story. But first, I took ordination in the Mahayana tradition, the Plum tradition, the Vietnamese Zen tradition, and the name I was given was Dang Dai Min, because my secular name is Desmond, so they chose a name that sounds similar to that. And diamond sounds like diamond. And the monk there was laughing. It's like, diamond, diamond, you're diamond. And it stuck. They call me Diamond there. So that's one of my nicknames. I started out in Mahayana Buddhism via Tibetan Center in Indianapolis, my home state, Indiana. And then I later discovered early Buddhism and the Theravada tradition. So I'm a child of both Mahayana and the Theravada traditions. I consider myself a non-sectarian practitioner, but I'm also first and foremost a humanist, a pragmatist, a realist. And so I'm able to extract wisdom from any spiritual teaching. And I spent most of my life being a relentless seeker of truth. When I discovered the 5 mindfulness trainings, I took them and received the name Tam Tue Quang. Tam Tue Quang. So that's my name and that tradition created by Master Thich Nhat. So you get many names on the spiritual path, not attached to any of them, but it represents where I've been and what I value, what is important to me. The 5 mindfulness trainings covers the whole of the Dharma, as we are about to see as I read the first mindfulness training. And hopefully everyone can hear me. If you can't, let me know and I'll speak up. But naturally, I have a loud voice anyway. So, reverence for life. Got it? Okay. Reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion and learning ways Okay. Is that right? Oh, it's wrong. There. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking or in my way of life, seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking. I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world. So you want to go through them and then we'll comment upon them later. How's that? Because this is very profound. This could take up a whole 2-hour talk. Just
It'll take up your whole life.
Yeah.
It's going to take up your whole life if you're doing it right. So, all right. True happiness. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I am committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others. And I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see that the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering, that true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion, and that running after wealth, fame, power, and sensual pleasures can bring much suffering and despair. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. I am committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on Earth and stop contributing to climate change.
True love. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I am committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others. I am determined not to engage in sexual relations without mutual consent, true love, and a deep, long-term commitment. I resolve to find spiritual support for the integrity of my relationship from family members, friends, and Sangha with whom there is support and trust. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are interrelated, I am committed to learn appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and to cultivate the four basic elements of true love: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness for the greater happiness of myself and others. Recognizing the diversity of human experience, I am committed not to discriminate against any form of gender, identity, or sexual orientation. Practicing true love, we know that we will continue beautifully into the future.
Okay, let's listen to a sound of the bell. Loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups, and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and in my lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness. Let's listen to another sound of the bell. when we invite the bell, we invite our heart to open and our mindfulness to be with us.
Nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the 4 kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me, not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxieties, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I'll repeat that again. This is a very important part of this training. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate interbeing and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth. And that concludes the 5 mindfulness trainings.
Well, let's listen to a sound of the bell, and then we'll open it up for questions or sharing experience. Okay. And we'll go ahead and practice a little bit of meditation and letting that all sink in. So make sure you're in a comfortable position for your body. Adjust a little bit if you need to. And as we hear the sound of the bell, we can focus on our breathing. We can be mindful of our body, mindful of any tension in the body or mind, and just offer our mindfulness to whatever arises. And we'll invite one sound of the bell to start, and then we'll invite another sound of the bell when we end. Okay, so just a few moments of mindfulness together. Okay, dear community, we've been going for about an hour now, a little bit over an hour, and we've talked a little bit today about Bante, about the monk life community, and we've just went over the 5 mindfulness trainings of Thich Nhat Hanh. Now is a time where I wish everyone can feel invited and welcome to ask a question or share their experience of your practice. Ask any question to me or Brother Nalaka, Brother Diamond. Yeah, go ahead, Morgan.
Um, Lately I've been listening to a lot of music, like uh, it's music education is what I was brought up in, and I kind of just had a rebirth of wanting to listen to a lot of classical music and playing my instrument again, and just kind of wondering where that fits in, because I know there's something in there about diving into sensual consumption.
Well, a practice is not necessarily consumption. Your studying and your practice and your um, expression of your art is more concerned with the heart. It's not eating something, right? It's not watching movies or TV shows with graphic images or things like that. It's not the same thing. It's the practice is not to be overly critical or suspicious. It's that we need to know our heart. We need to know our brightness, our peace, our freedom, our creativity. We need to know our opening and our widening out, right? And if you know that, you just need to continue, right? And deepen it if you know that it's coming from the heart. There's such a
It
clear,
is.
right, there's such a clear difference between double stuffed Oreos and milk and Doritos and whatever, right? Versus listening to classical music and developing your art and your kind of heartstrings there, right? Now, what you can do is maybe find a way to incorporate the 5 mindfulness trainings or the Buddhist teachings or what you've been inspired by to do the Dhamma work, to create music that has these teachings in it, right? To create music and to practice music that's celebrating this path. This is another entry point for practice that I hope our community can step into more in the future, but it's like we work to support the propagation of the Dhamma in ourselves, in the world, with the people that we know, right? We volunteer, we create art, we share, we offer, right? There are many different ways that we can practice this, but it's like we should have as a we have as a foundation in our community, and especially the Buddhist community, generosity, right? But generosity is not just about money or making a donation or something like that. It's about offering what is rich in you, right? And concerning yourself with the work of the Dhamma and supporting the work of the Dhamma. So it's great if you're playing your heartstrings in terms of your music. It's even better if you're using your music, your heart, for the Dhamma, right? For the Buddha, for the Sangha. Because there's more safety in it, there's more peace, there's more resourcefulness in it. We're safe in this community. We're protecting each other, we're supporting each other. We're safe in the Buddha and the Buddhist teachings, right? And the more that we can practice concerned with that, the more benefits that we're going to get, and the more we're going to feel that we're involved in a community of practice rather than just something that's secondary or something that's like, oh, I'm experimenting with spirituality. It's like your life is held by the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. But you have to get,
Okay, thank you.
get involved with it and be patient, go slowly, right? Step by step. We keep going in that right direction, and then we're safe, we're solid.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
And
I
trust
have a
your gut.
question, and
Trust your gut, right? Because double stuffed Oreos and milk, it sure tastes good, but your gut says to you that's not good, right? Your stomach, it has wisdom in there, and so we got to know how to do that, right? And every once in a while it's okay, but if you make it a habit, then that's the habit of your mind. That's the habit of grasping. So make the doing good deeds, make supporting the Dhamma, right? Make incorporating this all together, make that the habit. Go ahead, Gloria. Thank you, Morgan.
yeah, the fifth concept. Could you just clarify that for me, please?
What aspect? That is very deep. A
The
lot is covered.
the fifth one.
The fifth mindfulness
Huh?
training. Okay, let's go into what in particular.
Well, I what the way I took it that
Okay,
I should explain myself. I do a lot of things and
sure. Take your time.
in the community. Yeah, I do a lot of things in the community for serving, and a lot of it is volunteering. Just
Wonderful.
like today, around Christmas and Thanksgiving, we make sure that people have food to eat. We give away food
I like that.
to the community. Um, I deal with pantries, all kinds of things to that the system give us to give out to the community.
Great.
I enjoy that. I had a wonderful day. But then I noticed that some things that I do, I did enjoy it at one time. And I don't know, the Spirit's telling me to move on from that. And that is to help people um, that's sick.
Right.
I did hospice and stuff. But what I'm trying to say is, because I'm trying to delete some of the responsibility, because I am tired. I've been doing it for years. Am I doing all this also? I question myself, because even though I say I have a good life and I enjoy my peace, am I actually moving in this multiple fast pace? Because in reality, I am lonely.
That's your question.
I question that. And, I'm a type of person, I don't have a problem looking in the mirror and judging myself. Um, that's why I wanted to slow down some, because for many years it absorbed my whole life because I enjoyed it. But then I said, oh my God, there's no one there for me, and because I'm giving everything away to others. And majority of it's been a good journey, and especially like now in the journey, sometime it kind of rough, because I find myself people disliking me. We supposed to be working side by side, and they competing, and sometimes I just step back. It's enough work for everybody, you know. But then I know, to be honest, I'm exhausted. I want to do something for Gloria now. Is that selfish?
Thanks for taking the time to articulate your thoughts, because I heard a lot there that needs to be commented on. So,
Yeah, I'm venting because I have no one else to talk to this about, and I felt that this was the perfect timing.
it is the perfect time.
To yeah.
Yes. Yeah, this is the perfect time, the here and now. So actually, when you said that, I thought about one of our supporters at my home temple. This is not my home temple. I'm here on a retreat with Bante, but we have a lay supporter and she does a lot of outreach community work. And one day I had an insight by just observing her. When you observe yourself, you can't help but start observing others. That's just a part of being mindful, not judgment, observing, observation.
Yes,
And I
yeah.
said, she can't slow down. I saw it nonstop. So what seems like a pure noble action is selfless is not exactly that. She's generous, she does a lot, but she's afraid to sit down and be alone. She doesn't meditate. And I saw that. Whenever she comes, she's always busy doing everything but doing what really matters. Sitting down, stilling the body, and watching the mind. This is not to say that she's not making merit, but the Buddha emphasized the deep practice that liberates the mind. Everything else is connected to that. So you do good deeds, you help others, but the core of the practice is transforming your own mind. So that means if you're afraid of solitude, you need to go into solitude. If you're attached to solitude, you need to go into community. You see, balance. An
Balance,
extroverted
yeah.
person struggles in introverted situations. An introverted individual struggles in an extroverted situation, which is modern day society, which props up the extrovert at the expense of the introvert. That's a fact, sociology. So if you're doing a lot of good deeds and helping others, but you have no alone time, you're going to miss out on a lot of insights that you can only get by being alone. But if you're only alone, you're missing out on good deeds by being around others and getting out of your comfort zone. So it sounds like you've already realized that you've done a lot outwardly, but not enough inwardly,
I,
right?
I, I, um, I've been burnt out in the last 4 months 3 times, and I self care even when I have workshops. So, because I deal with mental illness workshops,
Hmm.
I get professionals to speak about it, but um, I trying to
Take your time.
I just I love my quietness. I love quiet, and I do have that opportunity because there's no one here but me, and I enjoy that peacefulness, and I'm very protective about it because this is a way where I go out in the world, I deal with all things, but when I need to be quiet, I have control who I let in. And I usually, when I come home, I just want that silence. You know what I'm saying? And I learned how important that is by being burnt out. I can't be everything to everybody. Even I don't care how much I enjoy. And nowadays with the church, there's so much sorrow. And when I was doing hospice, I did hospice for 4 months, and
Hmm.
that was experience, but it was draining. There's people so sad, and I'm very sensitive to energy. You
Mm.
know, not all the time, but majority of the time. And every day, I'm always learning and evaluating. But now I just feel because I did this over 30 years, and I just feel that what is it that Gloria wants to do for herself? That's going to make me happy. My peace make me happy, but it's more to that.
Hmm. Yes, this is something that only you can know for yourself. But you should try to find the balance in self
Yes,
care and caring for others, which is caring for self, because
yes.
we are all here together. That's the heart of interbeing, which weaves all of this together that we just covered.
But if you're not mindful, and I didn't have that quiet space, I wouldn't know what I know.
Correct, and that's why this community here values that. Even in the community setting, there's ample time for silence and going out in nature too, by yourself or with others. You need both.
Yes, yes, you do. And I noticed also, just in the last past 2 weeks, certain things been happening. And since I've been with up under Bante, I noticed that I'm more calmer. Not saying that I couldn't control it, but it got to the point when I dealt with toxic people, and it's being in the leadership. You can't run for it. You just got to evaluate a person's character and you got to deal with it. But it just got to the point that I was loud, aggressive, short patient, but now it's gone. I smile and I listen, and then I'll come back, and if I don't have an answer, I come back and with love, no matter what negative energy they throw at me. And that took practice to love someone that can just want to make your
Oh,
life
yes.
miserable.
Right. That's a serious practice, a superpower you've cultivated there. Unconditional love
Yeah,
or goodwill. That's called an immeasurable mind in Buddhism. It's limitless. It has no limit
yeah,
because it
yeah.
can
And
include
I
all
didn't learn
human
it
beings.
overnight.
And no, of course. And then there's the theory and the practice. So what you're doing is you're able to practice it in real life so that it's not theory by doing the charitable work you're doing, the selfless actions that you engage in. So you're on the right track. That's a good sign. You have
But
more
it's good.
positive qualities.
That's why I'm here, really, because it's like minded. You can't hold this conversation with just anybody that will actually
True,
understand it.
right. It would be foolish to try to
So
have this conversation with everyone. You have to meet people where
you
they are,
can't.
right? So that's
That's
the
why I have a
wisdom.
lot of respect for Bante,
That's
because he
wonderful.
drew
Yeah.
my attention, and I needed this, to think it. I said, wow, I like this.
That's wonderful. So rejoice in that, in your
I am.
ability to see with the wisdom mind, because that is an aspect of the wisdom mind, which is the compassionate mind. They go hand in hand, and it will become more powerful as you continue to live this way. And eventually you'll know when you need more alone time and when you need to be around others. Just trust, as Bante
Yes.
mentioned, that intuition, the intuitive mind, not thinking. Be careful, make a distinction. Intuitive is not thought.
Yes.
You just know. Then you can conceptualize it later, but it's a knowing that doesn't require thinking, and then you
Spiritually.
can think about it and apply logic to it. But first, it's direct. You just know, and you can't explain why. Maybe you can explain later, but it's direct knowing. You know what to do at the right time.
Yes. Okay,
Gloria,
I'll let
right?
someone else
So,
go.
sure.
Yes, it's Gloria.
Be well. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to ask a question? All right, so we are right at the 1.5 hour point, and I think that's a good stopping point. Thank you, everyone, so much for your sharing, your generosity. We keep practicing, we keep showing up. These 5 mindfulness trainings, somehow we read through them in 15 minutes or something like that. But there's so much depth, there's so much nourishment there, there's so much we can come back to have a more penetrative experience, if only we're willing. All right, not to distract ourselves, not to kind of mindlessly consume, but to really be willing to take on more responsibility, not less. right? And take it on in the right way, in the right direction. And there is a right direction to go on. There is a path to follow that's been walked, and we're not alone in walking that path, and we're not alone in that path being there. There's people who've walked before us and have been successful. So support, be supported, and just keep showing up, keep practicing, keep the penetrative aspect to it, right? Really showing up, really arriving, and know that that arriving is just like the sound of the bell being the voice of the Buddha, or being the voice of freedom, or the voice of God. What else could it be? What else could this sound of the bell be but the sound of the ultimate? So we like to finish our community gatherings by sharing the merit, kind of like what Gloria was speaking about in terms of, during the holiday season, a lot of us, we have we have extra wealth, and we offer that wealth out to the others. We support the others. We make sure that they're fed. We, check in. We support. We offer out. And that's not just in terms of the material, but it's also in terms of the mind, right? So that peace, that joy, that feeling of wellness, that feeling of depth that comes along with our practice, we can dedicate that out and share that with all beings. And we'll finish by dedicating the merit together. So I invite everyone to unmute your microphone if you know how to do that. You can unmute your microphone and just repeat after me as we dedicate the merit. Okay, and it's great to hear everyone's voice if you can. So we'll dedicate the merit. You repeat after me, and then at the end we'll say sadhu 3 times, and we'll also ring the bell along with that. And that word sadhu, it's a very ancient, very traditional, spiritual kind of Buddhist word that means may it be, and also well done. Okay? So everyone invited to bring their hands together and repeat after me. May all the merits that we have done till now
May all the merits that we have done till now
be dedicated and shared out
be dedicated and shared out
toward all sentient beings.
toward all sentient beings.
May all sentient beings
May all sentient beings
rejoice and share in our merits.
rejoice and share in our merits.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, thank you, dear community, for being here. Thank you, Brother Nalaka, for being here as well. And look forward to practicing with everyone again soon, okay? Thank you.